Welcome to Settle Conversations, the podcast that brings you insights and perspectives from the experts and personnel in higher education. Settle Conversations is sponsored by the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning at the UWI St. Augustine campus. The CETL, or Settle, is a unit that supports and promotes excellence in teaching and learning through research, innovation, and professional development. Whether you are a faculty member, a learner, or just curious about higher education, this podcast is for you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation.
Good morning and welcome to this special edition of Settle Conversations. This is a precursor event for our tomorrow's event that we have in the Teaching Award, the UE Guardian Premium Teaching Award, which takes place at 5 p.m. tomorrow at the LRC Auditorium. There's still time for you to register. If you haven't registered as yet, we'll need you to register because it is a catered event, and so we really want to ensure that you are catered for. And to register, we ask you to go to sta.ue.edu/settle, CETL. And I am really honored today to have Professor Mike Sharples. He will be our featured speaker at the event, and I'm really, really honored. And by the way, I'm your host, Leroy Hill, and Professor Mike Sharples is Emeritus Professor of Educational Technology at Open University, UK, and we're really happy to have him. He has a very busy schedule, and he's been at this for over 40 years. In fact, Mike did his PhD in artificial intelligence, so we're really honored to have you to share some of your expertise here with us today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow, to doing the presentation, and to the conversation today. So, yeah, thank you for inviting me, Leroy.
Yeah, and I hope you enjoyed the doubles this morning.
Yes, that was quite an experience. I've had Indian food before, but that kind of Indian spicy street food, that's new to me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And we're inviting our participating audience that we want you to ask your questions as you're going along. Please feel free to ask your questions. We will be highlighting the questions in the chat. And so we ask you to do that during the program. In fact, we have a special drawing for those of you who will be asking us questions. We'll be adding you automatically to a drawing of a special book. It's called Story Machines, written by Mike Sharples and Rafael Perez. And so we want you to ask questions. Don't just go ask any questions, crazy kid, but it has to be an artificial intelligence. And so we'll add you to the drawing, which will take place at our next Settle Conversation podcast. So we ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel because we do these podcasts, now and then. So we ask you to do that. What is this book all about? Can you share that with me?
So it's a book about the fascinating history of machines that can be creative writers. And the more I looked into it, the more it was just a rich and varied history. So going back to the 19th century, a clockwork poetry machine that could generate 26 million different poems of Latin verse, through to the work of Alan Turing and colleagues. Some of the first work they did was on generating Victorian love letters, through to the first attempts to write whole books with AI.
Wow.
There's a question, when do you think the first book that was written entirely with AI was, or has it been written yet?
I don't know. I mean, we'll have to read the book to find out.
I'll give you a clue. It's already been written.
It's already been written.
Yeah, some time ago. So there's just a fascinating history about AI machines that are creative, but also about human creativity as well. Are we story machines? How do we manage to write? How do we manage to be creative? And can a machine take over what we do?
Can it be creative?
Yeah.
That's an interesting point to perhaps start in terms of creativity. Do we think that AI actually kills our creativity? And also, Robinson talked about schools killing our creativity, but you think AI would have an impact on our level of creativity as educational practitioners?
I think professional writers have been worried for decades about whether technology is going to kill creativity. My own view is that it's a tool for creativity. Just think about something like a weather forecaster. A weather forecaster needs to have models to be able to forecast the weather. Or for understanding climate, you need to have really complex models. AI is a model of creativity, and we can use it to explore our own creativity. Just to, how do words come out of our head? How do we understand stories? How do we know which way to take a story? It's quite a mystery still. And AI is a tool that can help us to explore that mystery of human creativity. And that's, to me, what's exciting about it.
And I think that there are many more opportunities. And, with your illustrious career in education technology, can you give us an idea of some of the things that you've seen evolve in the field based on your experience?
Okay, so AI goes back quite a long time, back to the 1950s. So it's not new. It's been around. So I did my PhD at the AI department of Edinburgh University on cognition, computers, and creative writing. So
that was when?
Yeah, that was. I started it in the late 1970s, and I got my PhD in 1984. So that's 40 years ago. And so AI's been around since then. I think I was the first person to do a PhD in generative AI in education. So, but the AI then was very different. So
how different so?
So you had to do everything by hand. So if you wanted to create a generative AI program or a tutoring system, you had to code all the rules yourself. Now, it's kind of magic. It can take almost the entire internet and compress it into this huge neural network, which will tutor not just on one particular topic, but on any topic. It will write a story not just about one subject, but about any subject. And so it's much more general purpose now. And it's also consumer oriented. In my day, it cost millions of pounds for a company to have an AI system to help with, for instance, credit checking. Now, it can be embedded in all the tools we use, and that's the big difference. It's become much more democratic and much more accessible.
And to think that you can access it also on your mobile devices, even more revolutionary, because I see that Copilot has an app, and you could actually talk to it, and it really gives you back the response in real time. Our theme this year is empowering educators as a way of enriching our students, because we are in the education era. How do you see education, AI in the education era? What does it look like now, and what does it look like in the near future? What are some of the things we are grappling with now that we think definitely there are opportunities for us to really think about in how we're using it?
So I think the first thing to say is we're very early stage. So 2 years ago, the company OpenAI developed an AI model called GPT, and it took everybody by surprise how powerful it was. And then different companies now, Google, Microsoft, Apple, have come in on this, and they're getting more and more powerful. So I think that's the first thing to say, is that every month that goes by, these AI tools get more powerful. They will be ubiquitous. They will be everywhere. In all the tools that we use, they'll be embedded into the office tools we use, the education tools. So we won't be able to avoid them. There isn't going to be some big AI button that you press.
Turn it off.
It's just, yeah, you
it's
can't
not
turn
gonna
it
go
off.
away.
It's not going to go away,
Yeah.
just like the internet's not going to go away.
Yeah.
And for education, I think there are two things. One is it's been led by students.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that good or bad?
It's interesting. I mean, it's very different. And I think it's scary for universities and for schools because before, they've generally been in control. They've set up the learning environments and then the students have to use them. Now, the students are in control. They started by using AI to generate their essays for them. But students generally don't want to cheat. What they want is help
Guidance.
to use AI wisely. And I think that's our role as educators, to work with students to use AI wisely to support their learning and to become a kind of universal tutor and guide. So AI will be at student side, they will be in the workplace throughout their careers now.
Yeah.
So helping students to be able to work with AI is going to be a really important thing to do.
And you mentioned in terms of the AI working along with the students. I mean, let's think about it. And we've been speaking of personal learning networks for a while. I think now with AI, it makes it much more practical in terms of doing that. How can someone use AI as a personalized learning tool to create personalized learning? How do you think?
So I think the first thing is that it can teach on any topic, and that's one of the things that surprised me. Any topic you give it, whether it's teach me about academic writing through to teach me about quantum physics, it can do any topic. What you have to do is to prompt it. And now, there's been a lot of mystique about prompting and writing prompts, but basically you just instruct it, you tell it what to do. So you say, I want you to tutor me on academic writing, and I want you to teach me step by step, and this is my current knowledge. And then it will do it.
Yeah.
It will engage in a tutorial dialogue with you. And if you're finding difficulty understanding it, you just hold a conversation. You say, tell me more, explain it more simply.
Yeah.
And I think students are already realizing that it's not a substitute for a human teacher, and we can talk about this more, but it's a useful adjunct. It helps you to explore a topic in more detail or to get started in a topic.
You mentioned earlier in terms of AI as a tool.
Yeah.
And we spoke about, I mean, we can think about the industrial era where you have industrial 4.0, industrial 5.0. You think we're there with AI right now?
Oh, I mean, AI is still very much in its infancy. I mean, if you think about the World Wide Web in the mid-1990s, I mean, that's pretty much where AI is at the moment, generative AI. We're still just starting to experiment with what it can do. But what's going to happen, as I say, it's going to be embedded everywhere. So it will just take those tools we use at the moment, whether it's web search, information seeking, whether it's tools for writing, study tools, data analysis, and it will make them more powerful.
Great.
Now, I think that's a threat because there'll be some jobs that will just be replaced by AI, but I think it's an opportunity as well because you've got this tremendous generative creative power that you can work with. And that's what we've got to do as educators, help students to work with it.
And I'm thinking also in terms of the competencies in terms of how persons are using AI. And I think I've read elsewhere that AI wouldn't really replace persons, but persons who don't use AI will be replaced. So that's kind of scary because it's kind of forcing persons to say, okay, I'm not just ignoring it as a tool, but because it's a tool, I know how to use it. I can be enhanced in terms of what I'm doing. I don't know if you could share on that as well.
I mean, think about teaching. So teaching is not just transmitting information.
No, it's not.
It's not. It's not even about developing knowledge. It's also about care. So teachers care about their students. They care about knowledge, and also they have human experience. They have the experience of the world. And as teachers, that's what we do. We care for our students. We develop their understanding. We know them as individuals. We know their context. And AI is intrinsically uncaring. It doesn't have that knowledge of the world. It doesn't care personally. It's very competent, but it's not caring. So we need to really build on the caring side of
Caring
teaching.
side of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, are we ever going to get there? The caring part? I mean, a caring computer? That to me might be scary because you might have the uncaring ones.
I think computers will be able to simulate caring. So one of the things I've been surprised about is how their spoken language ability, they can take part in a discussion like this.
Yes,
They could take part in a tutorial. They could facilitate a tutorial, so every university can be like Oxford and Cambridge, where they have small group tutorials facilitated by AI. So they can simulate caring, and this is why you have to be very, very careful, very discriminating, because they can seem like they really understand, they really care for you. And you have to exercise that critical ability to say, firstly, are they really accurate? But also, do they really care? Can I trust them? And these are some of the new AI literacy skills that we're going to have to develop.
You mentioned the trust, because if I know the AI is intentionally lying and making things up, then that's a big thing for me. Before we continue, I just want to say we're going to pause here. We're going to have a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to continue the conversation. Great. We invite our audience participants to ask your questions in the chat. We have some persons who will be plugged in asking questions. I think one from Five Islands campus holding on, and one from Global Campus. So we thank you so much. Prof, we're going to hold on for a break. Thank you. Yeah.
Join us at the UWI St. Augustine campus for a prestigious evening celebrating educational excellence. On September 26th from 5 to 8 p.m., witness the UWI Guardian Life of the Caribbean Premium Teaching Awards 2024. Celebrate the outstanding contributions of educators who are transforming the landscape of learning. Be inspired by keynote speaker Professor Mike Sharples as he delves into empowering educators, enriching learners, the AI education era. Discover how AI is revolutionizing education from personalized learning journeys to innovative content creation. Join us in honoring the educators who are making a difference and shaping the future of education. Empower, enrich, educate. See you.
And welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to this Settled Conversation, this special Settled Conversations. And we just want to remind you to post your questions in the chat. I've invited a cross-campus colleague, Dr. Camille Samuel, to pose her question. She's the registrar of Five Islands Campus. And so, Camille, if you can hear me, please go ahead and share your questions.
Hi, Professor Sharples. As AI continues to change the landscape of higher education, what practical advice do you have for educators who may still be somewhat apprehensive about including AI in their teaching?
Okay, that's a really good question. And I'm not surprised that some teachers are apprehensive because, as I said before, AI is a kind of a rival technology. We didn't plan it. We've suddenly got to cope with it. I think the first thing to say is try it. It's not that scary. It's designed to be friendly. So there are a number of different free available AI tools now from Google, from Microsoft, from OpenAI. So get access to one of them and just treat it as a conversational partner. Okay. So ask it questions. So just one of the things about students is that they already use it and they use it just for fun. Yeah. So I would just say start by having fun with it. Just all those questions that you never quite wanted to ask a human being, try asking AI whether it, why is the sky blue? Or, what's the history of Trinidad? I tried doing that. So just ask it some questions. If it comes back with a response you don't like, then ask it again, try a different way. So that's the starting point, just engage with it. Then the next thing it can do is you can give it instructions. So you can say to it, for instance, I want you to teach me about this topic. And the way you do that, it's called prompt engineering, but there's nothing magical about prompt engineering. All you've got to do is basically say who, what, when, why. So you say who you are. So you are an expert in so-and-so. I want you to teach me this way, and I want to then hold a conversation about that. So I want you to teach me step by step. And just get it to teach you about a particular topic. So that's a starting point. And then think about all those little jobs that you have to do as a teacher that you really would rather somebody else did. Whether it's helping you with lesson planning, whether it's trying to give responses to students' assignments. Think about, is there anything that AI might help you with? And then get advice from people like Leroy on how to use AI to help you with those jobs you would really like some assistance with. And see how it works.
Yeah, I think it's more or less the practical aspects of using AI that some persons are exploring in terms of their teaching and learning. You mentioned lesson planning as one, and I do know that you have your practical pedagogy. We have it here. I noticed it's on ChatGPT. Is it?
Yes.
So tell us about that.
So what I did, and it's one of the things that ChatGPT can do, you not only have conversations with it, but you can now upload documents. And so the first thing I did was uploaded the whole of practical pedagogy, and then you can create your own custom GPTs, your own custom chatbots.
Okay.
So I asked
so persons don't have to buy the book anymore.
They don't have, no, they absolutely do. But what they can also do is chat with the book.
Chat with the book. Okay.
So you've got sort of a book plus now.
A book, okay.
And it's available on ChatGPT. It's called Teach Smart.
Okay.
And what you can do is you can ask it questions based on the book.
Okay.
So you can say, what is a threshold concept? Or what is space learning? Or how could I improve my lectures with, to make them more engaging? And it will answer you based on the book. And it took me, a year to write that book. It took me about an hour to design that chatbot. So again, that's the power of AI. I've now got a book plus. So please.
So is that available to everyone on ChatGPT free, or it's?
So if you've got access to ChatGPT, then you've got access to that chatbot called Teach Smart.
Teach Smart.
You just search.
Okay, I'm going to have to try that to see.
Yeah, do it.
Really explore into that, and we certainly have a number of emerging trends in education that uses AI. Any of them fascinates you more than any other?
So I think the emerging trends, the first one is just being embedded everywhere. I think the next one is that just coming along is problem solving. So you've got some new types of generative AI that can not only chat to you, but also can solve difficult problems. Now, I was trying to think of what would be a difficult problem, say, in arts and humanities. And you can get it to reason about what's called counterfactual history, things that haven't happened. So I asked it, what would happen if the UK had remained in the European Union instead of leaving?
Yeah.
And tell me a story, tell me the alternative history. And it did that. It reasoned first about what would happen, and then it's told me that as a narrative. So it can do problem solving. And then the next thing I think is going to happen is it's going to become social.
Yeah.
So we've really underestimated the power of social media.
Yeah.
And once AI becomes social, it's going to be embedded into all the social apps we have. But also it will be able to have these sorts of conversations. It will be able to have tutorial discussions. And I think once AI becomes social and once AI starts chatting to itself, then we're going to have a very different, a very new sort of dynamics. Yeah.
And do you suppose part of that dynamics would be having difficulty in seeing what is AI generated and what is human generated?
And to some extent, I think it's just going to be blurred because, as I say, when it's embedded in all the tools, as we use those tools, whether it's things like Microsoft Word, AI will start to power that. So it will be increasingly difficult, I think, to tell whether it's human or AI generated. And to some extent, it won't matter.
Okay.
And we think about something like Wikipedia. So in the very early days of Wikipedia, educators were saying, "Oh no, students
You
mustn't
shouldn't
use
yeah.
Now Wikipedia is as good as an encyclopedia, and in many ways it's much better.
Yeah.
And we don't worry about our students using Wikipedia. What we worry about is how good their essays are, how much knowledge they gain, how good they are at learning. And I think the same will happen with AI. We'll stop worrying so much about, is it AI generated? Is it human generated? We'll worry more about how good and accurate and truthful it is.
And what about how critical thinking is impacted?
Yes.
Do we see AI as leveraging critical thinking?
I think there are two routes. So one route is where AI just takes over and we just give it
Delegate.
over to AI. We delegate to AI in the same way we delegate to a pocket calculator. So that's a pocket calculator route. And the worry there is that we start losing really important skills. The other route is where AI augments our creativity, our knowledge, our conversations. And there we have to learn how to work with AI and also how to be critical of it. So that we need to put it in its place. And I think finding the right place so that we augment our creativity, we become more creative. I'm not a musician, but with AI, I could start creating music, writing lyrics. And so thinking about those new creative skills that AI might help with, it can help all the way through a design process, brainstorming ideas, creating designs. So I think that's the route I prefer, how it could augment creativity.
And let's imagine for a moment that I'm a faculty in business or law, and I want my students to really be creative, and I want them to use AI. How do I ensure, number one, that they're guided, to use AI social responsibly, as a social responsible student, but also to ensure that their critical thinking is heightened because of the use of AI.
I think that's firstly where AI literacy comes in, and I think there's a responsibility for all universities, and probably in the future all schools, to teach AI literacy, which is about responsible use of AI. And the first is to treat everything that comes from AI critically. So if you're law, for example, if you're looking at case law, and you could ask AI to come up with some good case law, and it will probably do that very effectively, but then you need to check that. Is that accurate? Are those cases real cases? AI is getting much better now, but occasionally it makes mistakes.
Right.
So we need to check and need to know how to check its responses. And then we need to know how to work with it as a creative assistant. So I think law is a good example that there's a huge amount of case law that you need to be able to master, and AI can help with that. In business, we can do business projections. We can ask what if with AI. What if I made this investment? What if this business was restructured in a different way? Using it as a tool for modeling business, I think, is a real opportunity. So looking for these great
different ways.
use cases.
And I'm thinking that if the student puts forward an analysis, obviously, of a particular case, we can also ask AI to analyze it based on what's in the database, so what's in the large language model specifically for that aspect. And I think that's where their critical and reflective skills would also be heightened, because now they can get feedback immediately.
They can get rapid feedback from AI as well. So one of the things you can do, just as a typical undergraduate student, is you can upload your draft essay and ask AI to comment
Analyze
on
it,
to find weaknesses in it. So again, it's a matter of you being in control, not giving over responsibility to AI, but getting AI to help you to mature and to adapt.
And we do the same thing with track changes in Word. You can either reject or you could actually accept when another person gives you feedback.
Exactly.
And I think
same with
those are
spell
some of the
checkers,
things
grammar
with,
checkers.
those things. I'm really enjoying the discussion, Mike. And when we come back, we're going to take a short break again. When we come back, we're going to go to the audience questions, and we certainly would want to see how you would, address some of the questions some of our persons are interested in things like Turnitin and so forth. But we're going to come, when we come back, we will address that.
Yeah, it's a big issue.
Yeah, it is. Welcome back to Settled Conversations, and I'm your host, Leroy Hill. Today I am really honored to have Professor Mike Sharples, who will be our key feature, our featured speaker at the UE Guardian Premium Teaching Awards tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. We ask that you, if you still want to, go ahead and register because this is a catered event. We asked persons, even before this conversation, to send in us some questions. And I'm really honored to see that we had questions from, I have a question here from Martha, and I have a question from Priscilla Baha, who asked, how reliable are technologies like Turnitin for distinguishing between AI-generated, and I noticed that someone, Michelle asked a similar question to that in the chat, between AI-generated and human-written assignments. And, can human really adjust student grades without risking wrongful accusations against students whose work is genuine, and so we certainly want to, what's your view on that?
It's hard. So the first thing to say is that every university is having to grapple with this, and increasingly schools are as well. The first thing to say is that traditional means of plagiarism detection looked for the original source. So it looked for the student copying from some website or from some document without acknowledging it. That doesn't happen with AI. AI doesn't copy, AI generates. So all of those traditional plagiarism detectors don't work. Humans really can't tell the difference. They think they can. I've got many academic colleagues who think they can tell whether something is AI generated or human generated. There have been some studies, one from Reading University in the UK, that injected AI-generated essays into the exam process. So normal examinations, normal reviewers of and markers of the students' assignments, and they injected some AI-generated essays, but they didn't tell the examiners. So do you think examiners were able to tell the difference? No, they couldn't. On average, AI did better than students, but 94% of the AI-generated assignments weren't detected. So humans really can't tell the difference between AI and human-generated, student-generated text. Now, there are a new variety of tools like Turnitin, which claim to be able to detect AI.
They claim.
They claim. And they're based on a kind of pattern matching. And the whole idea behind it is that humans have more variety in the language they use, and AI is more constrained. So they look for variety in the language. That's all they do. They just look for more varied text. But as AI gets better, it becomes, it does the same. And so you get this kind of arms race between AI getting better at producing varied human-like text and these detectors trying to keep up with them. And really they can't. Turnitin claims about 1 in 100 false positives. So if a student writes a genuine essay, 1 in 100 of those students, it will be assessed as being generated by AI. Now, is that acceptable, 1 in 100? Maybe, maybe not. But that's for an entire essay. If it was a shorter essay, then it gets much less accurate. And also, I think to me, the most important point is that students who don't have English as their first language are more likely to be misclassified as AI because their language is more constrained. So it discriminates against students who don't have English as their first language.
Wow.
And also, do you want to be uploading your student essays to an AI, to a company like OpenAI, or to Turnitin? Yeah, because which will then be using it for training. There's a privacy issue as well.
It is. And I think that's a premise we should advise faculty is that you are not, unless the student gives you that right to upload their essay into these tools, we're not supposed to. And I think that's why before they use it, I think every person is supposed to sign that or agree to that, that clause.
So it's not 100% reliable. And then what happens if you think you detect a student having written with AI and you challenge that student and the student says, prove it. You can't. You can't prove it.
Can you prove it saying, okay, we have a similarity index of 80%? Is that something that we should advocate for?
You couldn't do that in a court of law. And even Turnitin's, the company itself says you shouldn't be using this to mark down the student's grades. What you should do is you use it to start a conversation.
Okay.
So that may be legitimate. So you could use something like Turnitin. You think a student might have written, and then you have a conversation with that student. But most universities I've talked to now, they're not trying to use systems like Turnitin as part of that assessment process. What they're doing is trying to work out more authentic assessments, assessments that don't rely on those sorts of AI generation, ones that are much more based on creativity, on project work, on lab work, and also tracking the students' progress over time.
As they go through those.
And we've been saying for
we've been saying that for a long time.
Yeah,
we should be doing that. I mean, and I think we did get some inward with COVID where we actually saw a greater use of authentic assessments. And I'm thinking though, we are forced to be creative given this challenge. And I'm going to perhaps, because I know a colleague of mine has a question on assessments, in particular, Dr. Avenel Joseph from the Global Campus. Yeah. If you're here, Avenel, can you go ahead and ask your question now? I think that question would help us really dovetail nicely into the whole idea of assessment design.
We hear in academia a lot of buzz in this conversation about AI and the need for rethinking our assessment strategies. How can we as educators begin rethinking assessments to emphasize skills that are distinctly human in nature and less replicable by AI, while at the same time ensuring that we are evaluating the core competencies of our discipline? How can we strike that balance?
Yeah, very good. So I think we first need to ask, what are we assessing for? What's the purpose of that assessment? Is it to help the student learn, or is it for giving the student a grade? So that's the first thing. And if it's for helping the student to learn, then maybe AI can be part of that. Maybe we can have assessments which allow the students to use AI, but we take it to a different level. We help the student to develop a more critical competencies.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. If we're using it to grade, then there are ways that we can be a little more sure as to whether the student is doing their own work. For example, some universities now are asking the student to show they're working. So, for instance, if they're using Microsoft Word, you can show all the additions and deletions and how you've used it over time. Progress. So I think taking that progress-based assessment you can do. But it's also a balance as well. So many universities I've been working with have a balance of more dynamic assessment, where they're looking at students' work over time, authentic assessment based on lab work or on project work or on workplace assessments, and as well as that, maybe have a traditional invigilated exam as well, so you can triangulate between them. So it's starting saying, what are we assessing for? And then getting that balance right between process-based authentic assessment and a stricter invigilated exam. So
the meaning of that is dependent on the outcome, the purpose of the assessment activity. And certainly we recognize the need for us to be relevant. I think many of the assessment strategies may not necessarily be relevant to students, especially since they're using AI. And how can we train them to use AI in a more social, responsible way? And we may be giving them to do project work, group work, and they're using AI. So I think having that balance and more or less encouraging them to say, yes, how do you use AI? And I'm going to go back again. I know we're here in the University of the West Indies. We are certainly grappling with that, and we have come to an understanding that a nascent policy. We have a policy coming up, and then we do encourage faculty to say, okay, these are different ways in which you can use, and you're encouraged to use AI. And I think if it's not in there, that's one of the key things I think is necessary for them to know.
And I think working with faculty on what are appropriate means of assessment, because a lot of it is about context. If you're in legal faculty, if you're in business, if you're in health, there will be different methods of assessment. And I'm sure you in your centre have been working with faculty for a long time about better methods of assessment. Here's an opportunity.
And we are certainly seeing now how AI is assisting some faculty, even in the curriculum and course design. We're seeing that. We have some questions from the audience. I'm going to pause here. Our comments we see here. Sharidi Ali is saying, as we begin to look at AI as a tool, would you say that we can look at it as any other software tools such as MS Excel, and that we can develop the skill and certification to use it? Is that something in the near future, you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of these tools like Excel, like Word, like PowerPoint are going to have AI driving them. So as well as doing those traditional skills like how to manipulate a spreadsheet, you will also be having a conversation. For example, let's say you've got a huge database and you want to be able to analyze the data in that. You can put it into a spreadsheet, and maybe the first thing you want to do is just to interrogate that data. You want to understand what's important about it and to visualize it. So instead of having to do all that manually, you can then start to have a conversation with that data, with that spreadsheet. You can say, show me what's important in this data. Just nothing more than that. Just highlight the important things. Visualize it in a few different ways, and it will do that. So you'll be holding conversations with, for example, a spreadsheet or a database that will allow you to interrogate it in more depth and work with huge amounts of data like census data, population census data.
But what about big classes, huge classes I'm seeing here? Simon Fraser is asking, having a conversation with AI is fine, but if it's a big class, those huge classes, how can we really use AI?
I think one thing for a big class is that each student is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to have a personalized tutor.
Mm-hmm.
So say you were starting with some new topic. Let's say you were starting with, I don't know, statistical analysis as a topic. Then each student will have a different starting point. So you could maybe say to the student, okay, here's a prompt that you can use. And that prompt, if you put it into AI, will get you started on learning about this topic. And then the students will go away, they will have a tutorial session with AI, and then at the end, you can ask the AI, the student can ask the AI, summarize what I've just learned.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can take that summary back to their human tutor and
Mm-hmm.
say, this is where I started from, this is where I've got to.
Mm-hmm.
So each student can have their own little personalized tutor. Now, it's not a substitute for a human,
Right.
but it's a way of getting started, or maybe a way to explore a topic in more depth. So with a large class, you know,
That could make
giving-
things much easier.
giving a personal assistant, personal tutor.
And do you suppose that persons, I'm trying to look at a parallel in that I could have told the students to look at a particular video, look at different video sources, take notes, and come up with your conclusion.
Yeah.
And so AI can be seen in a very similar way.
Or
in
you
helping them
can
with
get,
that.
you know, you can ask a big question to a student, you know, like, here is all the census data for Trinidad and Tobago since the 19th century. Tell me something interesting about that census data. Not, you know, take this particular, but just tell me something interesting about it, something you didn't know before. And the student goes away and has to analyze that data, and AI can help them to do that. Or if it were in, you know, say computing, you know, design a website for this subject, and they can go away and do it, come back and show their results. So I think with a large class, you've got the idea of personal tutoring, and you've also got, in the future, you'll be able to have large class debates as well, with AI facilitating those debates, or even breaking them into tutorial groups and AI facilitating those tutorial groups. So there'll be new ways of teaching large classes, I think, based on more personalized interaction.
And I'm grappling with the idea of copyright.
Yeah.
And I see Tambourine Leo is asking, should copyright laws evolve to encompass and address the challenges posed by generative AI?
That's a good question. I think that it will be resolved in the same way these things are always resolved, with money changing hands. I mean, that's what happened with, for instance, music. And remember back to Napster.
Yeah,
And,
I remember that. Yeah.
And music streaming. Now it's, you know, pretty much been resolved, where you have streaming sites and money goes back to the originators. There are ways like authors licensing and collection society, and where the authors get a little bit of money when their productions, when their books or papers are being used. The same thing will happen. There will be a small amount of money which each author will receive from the company. So I think it will be resolved. We're still trying to work out these processes.
How that will work, because I mean AI, since it's not human, can't own copyright. I'll be happy to know how they would attribute, because many times there is no given. Where did I get this?
Yeah,
we don't know where you got it from.
Yeah. So at the moment in the US, AI cannot hold copyright. So only humans can hold copyright. So if you've got an AI authored book, then
it has to be open.
It has to be exactly. It has to be open. Anybody can use it.
Yeah.
But what happens if you just use AI in the same way that you're using spell checkers and so on, style checkers, when most of the work is human, but with AI just helping you? And I think that's what's going to happen for many authors. They won't admit anyway to AI writing the whole book for them, and they'll be stupid anyway to do that. Because basically, it's one thing we haven't really talked about. AI is good at being mediocre, but AI is not, you know, a great creative presence. It's not going to be the next Shakespeare, not yet anyway. It's not even going to be the next great novel, the next great song. It's okay at doing sort of background music, catchy tunes. It's good at being mediocre, but it's not good at being great. And to be great, you're going to have some combination of human and AI. And I think it's the human that will hold the copyright.
Oh. And I mean, interestingly enough, because when it comes to doing research, I'm not borderline the whole idea of scholarship of teaching and learning, but universities are now asked to do research using AI. And I know the challenge of copyright and usage of it. I know you work in learning sciences for a while. I mean, how can universities use AI to really contribute to the whole AI movement, and how we're looking at things like large language models that can be specialized towards a university challenge or goal or something? How can we use it from that standpoint?
That's something I'm really passionate about, because these language models have been developed by tech companies. And some of them are now being sold as automated tutors or aids to students. But many of the tech companies, they've been to university, but they don't know about the science of learning. They don't know about what is good pedagogy, what is good teaching and learning. And we do. You do. And so I think there's a huge opportunity for universities and for academics to work with the tech companies to develop not just ethical AI, but educational AI. That we really haven't started with what does it mean to have educational AI? AI which is based on good pedagogy, on the good science of learning, that helps teachers and students together, that respects teachers and respects the expertise of students. You can design good educational AI, but we're only just starting to do that. I would really like to see universities like UWI
definitely,
to work with the tech companies to design better educational AI.
I could see maybe our computer science department working with the humanities department, interdisciplinary work on how AI can be used to solve some of the issues that we have.
I mean, I mentioned earlier that you can now design these custom chatbots. So that's a starting point. So to design custom chatbots for different areas of education. I think it's a great opportunity.
And I noticed Jessica Cunningham is asking here that analysis, and we did identify that in terms of how AI can be used to help with the analysis of your. What about ethic concerns, the sub-resources required for generating resources, and the responses, exploitation of workers in the global south? Are these myths? I think someone is asking that question. On Favor Boy is asking, what about the ethical concerns, the substantial resources required for generating responses, and the reported exploitation of workers in the global south? So he's asking more or less about the ethical use in terms of the amount of power that's required to really generate these supercomputers in a way.
So I think there are two aspects of ethics. One of them we can maybe come on to in a minute, which is about, are AI systems ethical? Are they
environmentally?
Well, no, I mean just in terms of are they biased? Are they racist? But the other is about the resources. They use a huge amount of resources at the moment to train these models. One of the things I think is we're kind of reaching saturation with training the basic models now, because we've essentially trawled all the internet. There will be more resources for training, and I know that Microsoft, for example, is trying to work with nuclear power companies to use new sources of power, and certainly solar power as well. So, they are a drain on energy resources, and there's no getting around that. I think that once they're being trained, there's a lot less use of energy resources to keep them running. Some of them now you can even run on locally on a university machine or even on a laptop. But we do have to think about sustainability here. And what does sustainability mean in an AI age? We're already using far too much energy, and AI is just going to contribute to that. So that is it's a genuine issue that we have to think about.
It is. And I can see the whole intersection between climate change and environmental levies and usages and so forth.
On exploitation, so what happens when you train these? They're trained automatically, but then they're given extra training. And for that, they need to use human workers.
Yeah.
Now, as with many companies, in clothing industry, for instance, then they tend to exploit the global south. And that's, to some extent, happening with AI companies. Now, we don't know. And one of the things I really hope is going to happen is that AI companies are going to be more transparent. And if governments can do one thing, it's to insist on transparency, to say, how have you trained it? Who have you trained it with? Where are you using these workers? So there's a huge need for transparency for those companies. And I hope that that's a role for government to insist on transparency.
I have more questions, but I'm going to hold here for a break. And so when we come back, we will look at some more questions from the audience. I'm really enjoying this because I'm thinking how we can be environmentally responsible in the use of tools like AI that is, very resource heavy. Thank you, Prof. We'll see you in a while.
Join us at the UWI St. Augustine campus for a prestigious evening celebrating educational excellence. On September 26th from 5 to 8 p.m., witness the UWI Guardian Life of the Caribbean Premium Teaching Awards 2024. Celebrate the outstanding contributions of educators who are transforming the landscape of learning. Be inspired by keynote speaker Professor Mike Sharples as he delves into empowering educators, enriching learners, the AI education era. Discover how AI is revolutionizing education from personalized learning journeys to innovative content creation. Join us in honoring the educators who are making a difference and shaping the future of education. Empower, enrich, educate. See you.
And welcome back to Settle Conversation with Professor Mike Sharples, who will be our keynote speaker tomorrow at the UE Guardian of the Caribbean Premium Teaching Award at 5 o'clock at the LRC Auditorium on our St. Augustine campus. Do come and register. If you don't register, you may not be able to get inside. So please, it's going to be a packed audience. And so we really invite you to register ahead. While I was speaking and I was going back and forth, I could not help but reflect that we were thinking more on the teacher side. What about the students? And how can we, I know we mentioned about awareness for students, but how can we bring in the students as important partners in dealing and coping and being resilient with AI in empowering them? Because the theme of this year's event is how educators can empower in terms of enriching students' lives.
Yeah, that's a really important point. As I mentioned earlier, that it's the students who took the lead in the early days with generative AI. They were the ones who were trying it for writing their assignments. And now there's been some surveys in the UK by JISC, which is the government IT agency, asking students, what's their views on AI and what would, more than anything else, what would they like? And what they want is clear guidance. They don't want to cheat most students, but they want clear guidance. And also they want to have their views and their voices represented. And I think there's a huge opportunity for a dialogue. Yeah. So that teachers have one perspective, which is about lesson planning, designing curriculum. Students have another perspective, which is that they're going to be the ones who are going to go out into the workplace where AI will be embodied in everything they do. And they want to develop those skills. And I think they, more than teachers perhaps, know what those skills are likely to be. Yeah. Are they in the media industry, the games industry? Are they in computing? Are they in health sciences? So working with students on trying to think about these new AI type skills, how AI is going to affect the workplace. I would really like to see a dialogue between teachers. Maybe some group working together to develop joint strategy, joint proposals, joint within the university, joint regulations, but also new methods of assessment, doing that with the students as partners.
Yeah.
Is that happening at UWI? Are you working with the students?
I know we are working with our students in terms of AI in writing. I think there's a session coming up in November that we've put on because we recognize that they're using it to write, but we wanted to use it effectively. So the School of Graduate Studies partnered with us, and we're doing a session in November, early November, on AI, writing with AI.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but we're looking at it from a social discourse standpoint. But I want to go back to the whole idea of bias, because we do know a lot of this, a lot of things are fake, and I think Joanne Nazir is asking, can you speak about more the concerns regarding cultural bias? AI models, and is this creating a new form or a different type of colonialism controlled by AI?
I think it is. So some of the more obvious forms of bias have been started to be squeezed out of AI, for instance, racial bias or gender bias. But what's left is perhaps a more insidious, a more subtle form of bias, which is cultural bias. So the more I've interacted with generative AI, the more it seems to have a persona, a kind of woolly American liberal academic persona. And that's not surprising, because the people who design these systems and the people who align them come from that sort of background, the sort of Californian Silicon Valley background. And that's the sort of persona. Now, is that going to, that cultural bias, how is it going to affect the way in which we interact with all these tools if that persona is there in the background? And what would it mean to have, a Caribbean AI or a European AI? And I think that's a genuine concern, because, already for many, many years we've seen the sort of Americanization of our consumer and youth culture. AI is just going to contribute further towards that. So I think, we need to be calling out this cultural bias.
And how do we deal with it? I mean, what can we do as academics? How do we ensure that we safeguard against that?
I think there's two ways. One is what's called alignment. And alignment is, squeezing out the worst excesses. We can say there is also cultural alignment. So it will take more training. And again, we're talking about sustainability, but maybe you can train AI systems that will be more of a Caribbean culture, more of a European culture. Certainly that's happening in China as they're developing Chinese AI systems around Chinese culture.
So here is a role for the universities to be maybe making culturally responsive AI research to really support our own. Yeah.
And then the other thing is, again, I talked about these chatbots. So how can you develop new chatbots? You can upload sources. So you could be uploading sources that are culturally and contextually relevant to develop these new chatbots. And every university, even every academic, could be doing that. So I think trying to call out cultural bias and then trying to not remove it, because we never will, but trying to align it with our context is really important.
I think someone is asking in terms of the different other models of technology, traction in terms of large language modules. Are there other models that you think would come out of this AI movement, especially in education particular?
Yeah, we've only really been talking about language models, but there are many other sorts of models. There are models for art, for music, there are ones for supporting conversations. I mean, take art, for example. So I was working with the University of the Arts in London, and really innovative teacher there who was taking these image generators and saying, what does it mean to have an AI image? Is it different to a human image? And getting the students to compare the best of the AI images and the best of the human images and say, is there a difference? And that difference is narrowing, but is there something called AI art? And do we want to encourage AI art to be different to human art? So starting to be thinking about these AI genres, these AI types of artistic endeavor. Same with movies. So soon we will have
AI-generated movies.
Complete movies that are AI generated. Does that mean, again, going back to mediocrity, are we just going to have very mediocre movies that are being churned out? Are we going to have new sitcoms where it's AI generated and you are a participant in those sitcoms? So we will have a new kind of AI media. And that's both scary and exciting.
We have seen how technology has enhanced the creative industries in very meaningful ways.
And I think students who are starting to work in the creative industries, whether it's in creative computing, whether it's in the gaming industries, there will be new opportunities with AI. What's called AI agents that can go off and be semi-autonomous. At the moment, they're in computer games, but you can have much more broad use of AI agents in the world.
We're coming to the end, and I noticed someone is asking about AI and more about student assessments. I think what we can conclude in a very clear way that we should be more creative in using AI. Number one, to reduce the number of what we consider to be unethical use of AI in assessments, as well as allowing them to interact and converse with AI in so many different ways. But I'd perhaps invite persons to really come at the attend the event, because we want to be a little bit deeper in some of the things that you've mentioned. And I know we could not have talked on some of the things, but certainly we want to welcome you to do that. I want to say thanks to all who took part today. Thank you, Professor Sharples, for your insight. And we are really looking forward to tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. at the LRC auditorium for your keynote. And we have 3 of our awardees who will be identified there. And so we certainly want to have that recognized. I want to thank all those who took part. We ask you to subscribe to our channel. If you're on right now, subscribe, because we have a special drawing of Story Machines, which is a book that Professor has given us, but we are giving it back to you. So if you subscribe and you ask your questions, you certainly will be added to that drawing. I want to thank my cross-campus colleagues, Dr. Avenel Joseph Edwards and Dr. Camille Samuel, for the questions that came in. And for you, the audience who came and you ask your questions, of course, we could not answer everything. And I think it begins to provide an avenue for you to think or rethink how you do your teaching to value artificial intelligence. I want to thank my internal support, Mr. Mark Garcia and Mr. Javed Mohammed, and special thanks to Mr. Marsden Gordon for his technical assistance and support. Again, Prof, thank you, and I look forward. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow night, and I want to say have a good rest, because we want to make sure that you're speaking tomorrow. And I hope you find this discussion inspiring and informative, as I did. I really found it really inspiring.
Enjoyed the discussion, and thank you for some great questions, and thank you to the audience for great questions as well. I've really enjoyed it.
So until next time, stay calm and keep on learning. So thank you so much.
Settle Conversations, the podcast that explores dialogue with key experts and personnel in higher education. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Feel free to check out the links and resources in the show notes for more information. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on your favorite platform. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.